Welcome to episode number 111 of the Marine Layer podcast. We have our outfield and starting pitching preview. We'll do a spring training wrap-up as well for spring training for Speak Your Mind.
This show is brought to you by our great friends over at Pagotcha's Pub 85. It's over in Kirkland. You've heard us talk about it. Guys, spring training's wrapping up. Regular season baseball is just around the corner. If you want a place to go watch, head over there. It's an awesome spot to go watch Mariners games. It's an awesome spot to go watch sporting events. Go watch March Madness over there. NFL drafts coming up here in a few weeks. You can watch that. And if you do so, you want to hang out with your friends, you can have a great time, play some pool, eat some great food, have some great drinks, and you can go during happy hour and get some great deals. Happy hour is Monday through Friday from 2 to 6 p.m. It features $3 domestic beers, $4 Manny's Blue Moons, $4 Mac and Jacks, $4 Wells, and $4 house wines. If you want a great time with your friends and some great food and drink options, head over there to Pagotcha's Pub 85 in Kirkland. Before we start the show, here's your reminder. Rate and review, download our episodes if you're listening to the podcast, if you're watching, like, comment, subscribe on YouTube, and then go check us out on social media on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube Shorts at Marine Layer Pod.
Let's get it rolling.
The pitch from Acevedo. A drive deep to right field. Down the line. The Mariners win this game 2-1. The dream lives. They're going to the playoffs. On one from Jansen. There you go. Left field. We got a tie ball game. Julio. Oh, baby, what a moment. Tie ball game at 7-7.
And we welcome you to this episode of the Marine Layer podcast, part of the Just Baseball Podcast Network. Recording here on Thursday, March 14th, and we are 2 weeks away as of recording from first pitch of the 2024 season. Are you excited?
Hell yeah. Haven't we had enough hypotheticals in this offseason already? It has been one long offseason. It's almost been an offseason that's had like 3 different stories within it, all within one. And finally, we can get out of reading this book and get into reality with games about to start. I can't wait.
You read a lot of books?
Not as many as I should. Do you?
No.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Probably why it felt longer, because we're struggling to get through it.
Well, there you go. Speaking of that, we're going to try to jump right into it today because we know we're going to have a bit of a jam-packed show because Ryan Stanek signed and we had something to talk about on Wednesday before the goalie interview. We've got 2 previews to do today and a spring training wrap-up. So we're going to jump right into it, but one little note before we do. We're going to have our guest on Friday of next week rather than Wednesday. Wednesday show is going to be a preview of the relievers, of the bullpen, and then Friday is going to be our minor league show with Jim Callis. So we're excited to have him back on, our recurring guest. He's going to do a preview with us again. So it'll be a Friday guest episode rather than Wednesday, but that's just one little programming note. Otherwise, we've got a really good show today.
Let's start with our outfielders, and let's start with the person everyone expects us to start with. Julio Rodriguez, the Mariners center fielder for the 2024 season, coming off a 2023 campaign where he had, in his own words, a down season with a 126 WRC+, just under 6 Fangraphs wins above replacement, striking out about 25% of the time, walking about 6.5% of the time. And the expectations for Julio Rodriguez yet again in 2024 is for him to win the American League MVP. I'm putting it plain and simple. Julio's expectation this year is an MVP award.
It still never gets old to hear him say that was a down year. Can you imagine how many players read that quote and think to themselves, dude, are you kidding me with that? Like, I would give an arm and a leg to have a 6 WAR season once ever. And you're out here at 22 years old, or in your age 22 season, calling that a down year. Yeah, Julio went 2020 as a rookie. He went 30-30 in his second year. I don't think it's crazy to say he could go 40-40 this year. I don't think it's crazy to say he could win the MVP. I don't think it's crazy to say he could put up 8 or 8.5 wins, maybe even a little bit higher. There is no ceiling for this guy. I know he's only 23, and there's still some things he has to work on. There's no ceiling for what he can do this year.
His words said it, but I think our eyes saw it as well last year. I mean, this has been well documented. I think you and I would agree, though, right? We look at his numbers after last season and say, that wasn't a down year. Yeah, But you and I sat here at the end of the season and said, probably. It probably was. Like the eye test showed it for a lot of time. It felt like.
Well, yeah, because he struggled most of the first half. He had his numbers balloon thanks to a great August, almost a historical August. And then he faltered a little bit down the stretch in the back end of September when they really needed him. So yes, as a whole, who's complaining about a 6-WAR season? Nobody. But you're absolutely right. When you break it up, and I think Julio would tell you the same thing, that's what we're more talking about. And that's what he's more talking about. I don't think he wants to be I don't think he wants to be WRC plussing in the mid to high 90s by the All-Star break this upcoming year or whatever it is. If he does again, I think he and a lot of other people would say, yeah, that's disappointing. I think he expects himself to be very, very much toward the top of the MVP race by that point.
There's a couple things like we look for Julio in this, what we want him to do here in 2024. Of course, he's going to be great. Like there's honestly not a whole lot, because if you look at his Savant page, it's a whole lot of red. Doesn't really overall have too many issues. You know, people are going to talk about clutch. We've gotten multiple DMs like, can you guys talk about Julio not being clutch? Like, yeah, it's well documented he was clutch. He was not good in the 9th inning last year. He was not good when the team was behind, and he was not good when the team was in high leverage situations. Those are all times when you want your star player to step forward and really present himself at the plate, and he did not last season. He had a significantly negative Fangraphs clutch score last year. That's also bad. That also means Julio is not coming up in the biggest moments when the Mariners needed him. But there's one specific thing when it comes to his approach at the plate that I know Julio wants to cut out, and some of the swing changes he made in the offseason where he's eliminating sort of the dip in his stance and the length and levers of his swing. It's a lot simpler. He's standing up straighter, and he's not bending down as much when he's swinging. This man chased a lot last year. He chased a lot of pitches outside the strike zone. And as hitters mature, as we've seen with Ronald Acuna, especially last year, who made an enormous jump in terms of not swinging at pitches out of the strike zone, eventually, if Julio continues to play up to his talent, I feel like he's going to do the same thing. He might not drop to a Ronald Acuna level. I think it was 12% strikeout rate last year. That might not be Julio, but expecting superstars when they say they're going to improve their plate discipline to stop swinging at 41% of pitches outside of the strike zone, we'll take them at their word, and usually that number decreases significantly. Julio might not be below 20% strikeout rate this year. He might take a couple of years to get to that point, but I feel like for a successful 2024 Julio Rodriguez season, outside of all the expectations, that's the biggest thing I'm looking at.
He saw it with Mike Trout, too, early on in his career. Early on, phenomenal player, but he struck out a decent amount. He would often come up short on those high fastballs. He's always been a great low ball hitter, but he would whiff at some high fastballs a lot of the time. Then you saw him all of a sudden not only start to improve in that regard, but he started to walk more, too. I think you'll see that with Julio as time goes on. Who's to say it can't be this year? We've already started to see it a little bit, to be honest with you. Like, if you watch some of his spring training at bats, he's laid off a lot more pitches that he was previously chasing. Like a lot of those sliders that are just biting away from him, he started to lay off those. And look, it's spring training. We're going to need to see it in a full sample size of games over the course of 162. But it's a good start. It's a good start when you see him start to put those off-season goals and blueprints into action when he's playing in games, because like we saw it ourselves with our own two eyes last week. He started to lay off a lot more of those pitches. That's a really good start.
And what stinks about all of that is he had better quality of contact overall last season than he did as a rookie, like a pretty good amount better. But it didn't matter because the quality of contact was offset by the fact he was swinging at pitches that weren't good to hit. And when pitches aren't good to hit, you probably shouldn't swing at them. So that led to overall less numbers. 20 points of WRC plus lower than his rookie season. 20 points. That's a pretty significant drop for any hitter in baseball, no matter if you're a superstar or an everyday player. If your WRC plus goes down 20 points in season over season, something happened. And that happening thing for Julio was continuing to chase a lot while having a very inconsistent season at the plate. Here's one other interesting thing for Julio. Have you seen this drastic difference in his DRS and his OAA from last year? I mean, his DRS was -5 but his outs above average was 98th percentile. I mean, we're talking about bell curves before we started recording this episode. You have the OAA at the top, at the right end of one bell curve, and then you have the DRS at the other end of the bell curve of his defensive ability. Really strange stats. My eye test told me he was still pretty good in center last year.
OAA loves him. It's always loved him. His rookie year, he was in the 95th percentile. Oh, I mean, we know he has good range. That's what OAA takes into account for the most part. And look, we've talked about it. It's good that there are metrics out there to measure defensive value, but these defensive metrics are still pretty new, so they're not perfect, which is why there's such a drastic difference at times between DRS and OAA. Yeah, I think most people would tell you Julio Rodriguez is a damn good defender. I would say that. You would say that. I think most people would say that. So DRS is DRS. I'm going to sit here and say he's one of the best center fielders in baseball, especially defensively, because he is.
I'm going to concur with that.
You know, last thing from me on Julio, you know what could really benefit the guy this year? A good April. A really good April. You're talking about a guy who, in his career, he's hitting 222 in the month of April. He's got an 88 WRC plus in the month of April and a 665 OPS. That's his 2 seasons combined. Look, April in Seattle's tough. It's cold. It's rainy. The namesake of this podcast, the marine layer, very much plays into effect. It's not easy to hit in Seattle, period, especially early on during the year. But man, if Julio could just get off to a hot start and then just go, it's going to make such a drastic difference. Not only mentally, but just to see those numbers up on the scoreboard and see him, like, if he looks up there and it's like, oh, I'm going off already, he can just coast the rest of the way. Like, it's such a trendsetter for what he can do the rest of the year rather than having to play catch up like he did in August after a bad first half.
We keep saying how the Mariners need to have a good April. It's really hard to see the Mariners having a really good April without Julio also having a really good April. So the two go hand in hand. If the Mariners are going to get off to a hot start this season, it starts with Mr. 44 in center field.
Yes, it does. And just like the start of the season could go as he goes, we know this team can go as he goes. If he has a true MVP season, sky's not just the limit for him. Sky's the limit for the Mariners too. Okay, moving on to left field. Luke Raley, recently acquired this offseason from the Tampa Bay Rays. This has been well documented. This is a player that had a tale of two halves. He lit the world on fire in the first half of the year in Tampa last year. In fact, when you split it up, his first half, he had a 925 OPS. Yeah, he crushed it in the first half. Second half was a little different, and he had some injuries in the second half, and that played a part. But he put up a 93 WRC plus and a 677 OPS in the second half. Luke Raley's a good hitter, but they need some form of consistency out of him this year, and that is something he has not yet done over a full season in his career.
Is he not the most boomer bust player on this roster? Has to be.
I think he is.
Taking a peek at some of his contact rates,
yeah,
he is like a Teoscar Hernandez level profile when it comes to swinging at pitches both inside and out of the strike zone. You look at, if you go on Fangraphs and you look at his contact rates in and out, inside and outside the strike zone, I mean, they're both lower than league average in some cases by a pretty significant amount. That's not really an approach thing because pitch selection isn't really his issue. It is just making contact. And that comes down to the mechanics of the swing. And he is, a guy who, as we see, struck out 31.5% of the time last year. I don't know if his contact rates are going to improve. Seattle's certainly not a place where guys' contact rates shoot through the roof unless your name's Ichiro. So I wouldn't hold out hope for that. Can he manage it? Can he not go through an April where he's hitting 100 at the end of it? Can he get through that part? The worst thing that can happen for this is if he gets off to a Colton Wong, Tommy La Stella, AJ Pollock start from last year. I mean, and things are just in the dumps. And we reach the middle of May, and there's some talks that people probably in the organization don't want to have because Luke Raley should be a big part of this team last year. But his profile suggests that he's prone to being cold for whole halves of a season just because of how little contact he makes. And that's not the kind of vibes you really want around this team, which is why it's that much more important for Luke Raley to get off to a hot start this season. I will note he's not gotten off to a hot start in spring training. That's for certain.
I would say to everybody freaking out about that, let's take spring training with a grain of salt. Look, if guys are playing well in spring training, great. That's great. Obviously, it's always better for guys to play better than worse. But if guys aren't playing well in spring, this is what spring training's for. J.P. Crawford, aside from this year, has never been a good spring training player. It hasn't affected him. It certainly didn't affect him last year.
What were Scott Service's exact words, Lyle, about J.P. Crawford?
I think he said J.P. Crawford is not a good spring training player. I think J.P. knows that. I think Scott knows that. I think it's just, well known at this point, right?
Yeah.
Look, there's a lot of pros that Luke Raley has to his game. It's funny, his platoon splits aren't that drastic. He actually hits both sides of the ball pretty well. He has more power against righties, hits for a little more average against lefties, so that's a good sign. It shows that if he can get off to a good start and prove he can show some form of consistency at the plate, he doesn't necessarily need a platoon. That's going to be saved for the other outfield position we'll get to in a minute. And he also, I would say, does some other things pretty well, because this is a guy that barrels the ball up a lot when he makes contact. He draws barrels. He hits the ball hard. I'm not going to quite say his profile is Teoscar Hernandez level, but there are some similarities. The issue with Luke Raley is the strikeouts. He strikes out a lot, like you mentioned, and the problem is not just the strikeouts, it's the whiff. It's the swing and miss that really gets him. He can swing and miss close to 40% of the time, and that is very high. I'm talking like first percentile of the league high when he's swinging and missing. So with Luke Raley, even more so than Julio, a good start is imperative for the guy. Because you're right. You don't want to bring in another guy that has Seattle problems with the bad weather and a slow start when there's decent expectation centered around him. It's pretty important he starts off hot. And it's hard to do that in Seattle. It's also hard when, again, he hasn't played that many big league games and he hasn't had a full big league season. But the Mariners really need him to start hot. So again, like, platoon splits are good, hits the ball hard, but the swing and miss is going to be the make or break.
Are we sure he's not platooning?
Well, I mean, if Dom Canzone proves he can hit lefties and righties from both sides, then sure.
I feel like Raley's more likely to platoon than Dom is. I'm going to be honest. Like, Raley was, I would be a little surprised, since Raley was very much protected by the Rays last year from lefties. I mean, he had, 37 plate appearances against lefties last year out of the 400 total he took. Very, very, very small sample size. You're right. There's not a difference really in his platoon splits between lefties and righties, but he did have 42 of his 45 extra base hits last year against right-handed hurlers. I would lean, as of right now, that Luke Raley will be the platoon. I think they envision, we'll get to Dom here in a second, that Dom will be the guy who they want playing every day, because especially with the more sustainable offensive profile that Dom has over what Luke Raley has. So, I mean, a lot of really interesting things here about Luke Raley. I think the other most important thing that he stays like on the roster. I was thinking about that. He's the backup center fielder for Julio. He played center last year a bit for the Rays. He's known as, despite a guy who's like Julio's size, 6'4", 235, he's also a pretty decent speed demon on the base paths. He is probably your backup center fielder. So if you don't want to put him in the lineup, period, A, against lefties, but B, in general, because he's struggling so much with his strikeouts, what if you want to give Julio a day off? Like, that's going to be your guy in center. It's not going to be Dom, right? Unless you're going to make a roster move. Like, Raley makes a lot more sense in that case.
Yeah, it does. And maybe this is a good transition over to the right field guys, because look, what I'm saying here is Luke Raley, if he hits, doesn't have to platoon. We'll see how he does against lefties, because time will tell. But you're right that I think there is a world where they're really envisioning Dom Canzone is the everyday guy, especially because he started to hit against lefties. So, and look, he's like the prime breakout candidate on this roster. Everybody seems to have the same answer when you ask, who's the guy that can really take a step forward this year? Everybody seems to say Dom Canzone. So let's start with him when we talk about the right fielders. This is a guy who was maybe the best hitter in all of minor league baseball last year, showed some flashes with the Mariners early on, doesn't strike out a whole lot, and is a guy that started to show in spring training this year he can hit lefties.
And this season changes immensely if Dom Canzone hits. He doesn't need to hit like his minors. He doesn't need to be the best hitter on the team. He does not need to be the best hitting outfielder. He doesn't even really necessarily need to be like the second best hitting outfielder. Although I think in a peak season, that's where Dom Canzone would fit in. Probably the second best hitting outfielder of this group with the tools he has shown. I mean, he's overhauled a lot of things of his swing to be a little bit more efficient and utilize more of his tools without having an issue like we documented that he's been chasing a bunch. That he spent a lot of last year as a guy who, despite not striking out a whole lot, he didn't walk a lot because he ended up having to cheat and swing at a lot of pitches out of the strike zone. And he came to camp early to work with Brant Brown and Jarrett DeHart to get that crouch out of his swing. I think what that crouch was doing last year, if I'm reading it correctly, that it was taking Dom too long to get fully loaded and load into his swing. Therefore, by the time his leg was up, he had to make the decision to swing earlier than he wanted to, which led him to swing at more pitches. It makes sense. He chased more pitches out of the strike zone than Julio did. More pitches. That's impressive. Judging that, again, as I mentioned, Julio, 10% more than league average. Dom was more than that. So Dom was working that out of his game. He put on some good muscle as well. So even if he's not going to hit for a ton more power, and Dom Canzone's profile is probably a 20 home run player at his peak, but all the good signs showing for Dom Canzone of this 24 season for him to be the breakout candidate. And the last thing here that's going to sting your eardrums, the Mariners, when they got into this offseason, had a decision to make between two left-handed hitting young outfielders, Jared Kelenic and Dominic Canzone. This is the guy they chose. And Jared and Dom, this is the guy they chose. This is the guy they wanted in the outfield to help lead the Mariners into the future. So there's an okay amount of pressure on Dom Canzone's shoulders to perform because he starts scuffling a little bit. The same things will happen, unfortunately, even though he's our guy.
Oh, no. I think they made that decision the minute they traded for Dom Canzone. Kelenic had already kicked the cooler by that point, and then you have two club-controllable left-handed hitting outfielders. Again, we've talked about at this point how we think it was pretty much inevitable Kelenic was getting traded this offseason. We'll never know, but if I had to guess, I think they had decided on Dom Canzone being the guy basically when they traded for him. At
some point, they made that decision. So, some point in 2023, they made that decision, and.
Well, I'm just saying because they didn't trade for Dom Canzone with 6 years of club control to then flip him 3 months later in the offseason. I think when they made that trade, they're like, this is the guy.
No. Well, yes. They liked the profile, but Dom was far from a finished product. And I think this offseason was a big part of advancing him further in that. There's a video on Twitter of this week of him against, who's he against? Darvish? Yeah, he was against Darvish. He put together like a really good plate appearance, was showing some very good discipline. We mentioned the chase issues. He was not chasing in that at bat. I mean, it's good things overall in a small sample size. We've seen everything we've wanted to see from Dom, including his biceps, which are nice. He's done a good job with those.
Well, like we asked him about in spring training too.
Exactly.
We'll put that out on our social media accounts at some point. We did a lot of interviews at spring training. One of them, or a few of them, were with Dom, and that was one of the questions. So at some point, we'll put that out on social. I also think you're lowballing his home run total. I think 20 is low for what his max home runs can be. I think he can be a mid to high 20s home run guy. I don't think it's crazy to say he can hit 25 bombs this year. I think he can hit that many.
We'll see. I think this year will give us a good gauge on what Dom Canzone's future is. Like he also needs to hit the ball in the air more, too.
Yeah, but you know what? He had 6 homers in 59 games in his first stint in the big leagues. Roughly, that's close to 20 already if you prorate that through a full season, and that's a rookie. Like I think it can go up in 24. I would not be shocked. I think Goldie said the same things at some point, not with us, but somewhere else. He said, if you were to tell me Dom Canzone was to hit 25 homers this year, I'd say, yeah, I'd believe that. I'm kind of with him. I think the same thing. I see no reason Dom can't be a 25 home run guy. He's got the power to do it. He's just got to eliminate a little bit of the chase. And it seems like with this new stance, it can help him do that a lot.
And despite all of the negatives from last season with the now reworked swing, his old swing, chasing too much, he still really underperformed all of his expected stats. He had really good expected stats in the minors, came up to the bigs, and still had pretty decent expected stats for someone who didn't do almost that much damage at the plate, and very, very much underperformed that. We tried to pick out a couple reasons why he might have underperformed that due to swinging at a lot of pitches out of the strike zone. But the opportunity is there, though, for Dom, knowing that even with his old stance, he had a ton of upside and a ton of good quality contact at the big league level. And he's got a good chance this year. So I'll give that to Dom. I mean, dude, I'm just trying to, just to remind people, just give people a little bit of refresher of like what Dom Canzone did to the PCL last year. 354, 431, 634 with a 151 WRC plus, walking and striking out 13% of the time. He's pretty good. He was pretty good.
Yeah, like AAA, as we know, can be a bandbox, the PCL, but that is a real hitter. And the Mariners knew that when they traded for him. I'm not saying Dom Canzone's going to hit 360 in the majors, because nobody does, not even Luis Arraez. But this guy can flat out hit, and he can hit for power with authority. And like you said, if he hits this year, that makes a huge difference for the Mariners. And plain and honest, I think he's going to. I think you're going to see him take a big step this year. And this is a good way to segue. Dom Canzone played 59 games last year, right, in the majors, and he kind of got his feet wet. The next year, he could really break out. You know who that mirrors a little bit? Another guy who came over from the Diamondbacks after a short stint in the big leagues to the Mariners, and then at age 26, broke out. That was Mitch Haniger. Haniger, to be exact, he played 34 games with the Diamondbacks in 16, got traded over in the offseason, and then went off. That was long ago. He is now back in Seattle, as we all know. He is going to be the left-handed side of the platoon, one way or another, whether it's with Canzone or Raley. He's going to hit lefties. It's their way to optimize his strengths and also keep him healthy. But first and foremost, I'm so happy Mitch is back. Like, you can just tell the difference he already makes on a team of what's a lot of young players, with the experience he has, the success he's had, and just how well liked he is in the organization.
Mitch Haniger was the guy they were missing last year. Like, just the guy in the clubhouse to keep everyone in check. That was the one major concern from last year's team, that there was no leadership on the team, that there was no one who was ingrained in the team for a long enough time who also happened to be a veteran. And I wouldn't say predictably, but they didn't live up to performance, and a lot of the young guys struggled. Julio, most importantly. How important would have Mitch Haniger been to last year when Julio's going through his sophomore year slump? It probably would have made a pretty significant impact. But it's not only Mitch's impact on the field, but it's like Mitch's impact and his personal life off the field. Like, reading all this stuff about Mitch Haniger and signing his deal with the Giants. In the early part of last year, Mitch Haniger would play his game with the Giants, go home and watch the Mariner game. That's what he would do. You think he wanted to be in Seattle? Yeah, a lot. What kind of impact does that make? The fact that Mitch Haniger no longer has to go home and watch a different major league team on his television after the game is over. The amount of focus he can put on one singular team and on his preparation and on his health to impact this club. I really like this role for Mitch, because Mitch is most likely done being an everyday player, I think. Not that his bat is not good enough, but his health does not allow it. It does not allow it. He's had some fluky injuries in his career. He had some back and oblique issues last year, which when they spring up, they're tough to get rid of, and they're tough to swing through a season. And Mitch Haniger's missed time last year really showed that. But now he's not going to have to worry about that. He's going to get true days off where he's going to sit on the bench. He might pinch hit, but that's it, because the Mariners, more likely than not, won't get many DH days for Mitch Haniger. They won't throw him in center field like they did in his first stint. He's going to be a right fielder and a pinch hitter this year for the Mariners against primarily lefties. And the platoon splits, as he's aged, have gotten a little more discreet. Even though if you dial it back to 2021, they were pretty even. Same with 2018 in his best season as a Mariner. They were pretty even. Used to be like that. Not anymore for Mitch Haniger. So his role this year is going to be crucial, because he's going to need to play well but he's also going to need to play well in short spurts with not being able to get in the rhythm of playing every single day.
You got to give credit to the Mariners because they know with the lineup they've acquired and pieced together, there are guys on this team who are injury prone. And credit to the M's, they're doing everything they can to keep guys healthy and on the field. They know Mitch Garver gets injured. They say, look, Mitch, you're not going to catch anymore, or at least like unless it's an absolute emergency, you're DHing. We're going to keep you healthy. We're going to keep your bat in the lineup because we need you. We need you too, Mitch Haniger. So how can we do that? You're going to hit lefties, which is your strength. You'll play half the games. You'll pinch hit. You'll have more days off. You can stay healthy. If they can do that, that is imperative because you cannot lose all these guys at the same time or you're going to be really reaching for impact out of guys that you weren't previously relying on. You are relying on Mitch Haniger and Mitch Garver and Jorge Polanco and players like that to make an impact. So if there are ways that you can optimize their health, do it. And the Mariners are doing it. So to have Mitch play in this role and get back to Seattle, be a clubhouse leader, it's perfect. And look, the way he's played this spring, the guy's OPSing like 1450, which I'm sure will not carry over to the regular season. But if he can play in this role and be a 110 to 115 WRC plus guy, you won't hear a word out of me. I'll tell you what, that is everything they could have bargained for and more out of Mitch.
It's always good to have a number 17 in teal, isn't it?
It is. It is. Some say he might be superior to another 17, a 17 he took away an extra base hit from earlier this week on the Dodgers.
Wasn't that over the wall? Wouldn't that been a homer? Was it close?
I don't think it was a homer. I think it would have been like a double.
It was close. It was close.
But in conclusion, Mitch better than Shohei confirmed here on the Marine Layer pod. Sorry, not sorry.
People are saying. Well, high expectations for this Mariners outfield this year. It's going to be a fun group if they can all stay on the field. And for the first time in a while, I mean, you have four guys you all look at and say, these guys can all impact the game in multiple ways, whether it be bat, defense, speed, and youth, too. You have the combination of everything. Like Luke Raley, for example, this will be only his second full big league season.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yeah.
Pretty exciting.
It is. Last thing before we move on, and this is not statistically driven or anything like that. This is just a vibes thing and a feel-good thing. I can't wait to see Mitch get announced on opening night, see the ovation he gets. People are going to be fired up to see him back in Seattle. We've already seen it in Arizona, the types of ovations he's gotten. It's going to be different when he's back at T-Mobile.
Before we get to our starting pitching preview, let's hear a word from our friends at Simply Seattle. With the season coming up here quickly, 2 weeks from opening day as of today, it would be the best time to go to Simply Seattle and get all of your favorite Mariners gear. You can use our code Marine15 for 15% off your order at checkout, whether you're a Mariner fan, Seahawk fan, Sonics, Huskies, Kraken, whatever you want that's Pacific Northwest sports themed. You can go to simplyseattle.com and use our code Marine15 for 15% off your order. Now to the starting pitchers, and starting off with The Rock, Luis Castillo, top 5 Cy Young favorite in the American League this year, coming off a 3.5 win season in 2023. And man, this dude just keeps on rolling into his 30s. The Rock is going to keep chucking it this year for the Mariners.
Look, he finished 5th in Cy Young voting last year. Who's to say he can't replicate that or build on that here in 2024? What's unbelievable about Luis, and a while back we talked to Jason Churchill about this, and he said, I think the Mariners believed when they traded for Luis Castillo, they could get even more out of him than the Reds were getting. And in a lot of ways, we've seen that. Luis Castillo's fastball was not this good in terms of production and value when he was in Cincinnati. It has skyrocketed since he's gotten to Seattle. Guys do not hit it. Guys have serious trouble squaring up Luis Castillo's fastball. And it has been his go-to pitch over the last year and a half in his tenure in Seattle. It's been his bread and butter. And the guy, he works off it. He has a ton of success with it. His sinker started to get that much better. Like, for a guy that's entering his age 31 season, I still think he's getting better.
It's interesting with Luis. He's getting better, but he's honestly evolving. You can really see the Mariners' imprints on Luis Castillo. Last year was the first year he was not a primarily ground ball pitcher. First time ever. And I don't think it's any secret that that directly correlates with the fact he threw his fastball, get this, 400 more times than he's ever thrown any pitch in any season of his career last year. He threw his fastball more than he has thrown any pitch of any season of his career. So safe to say he was living and dying by the heater last year. His four-seam fastball was his bread and butter in 2023. Is he going to continue doing that in 2024? I would have to think so. But there's some drawbacks with that. Luis Castillo got hit a little bit harder last year, gave up a lot more fly balls, had a lot less ground balls. And as we've known, and as we've seen the Mariners sculpt their bullpen this way, you want less home runs and more ground balls. Luis Castillo's going away from both of those in an effort to utilize his best pitch on the bump. As long as his velocity stays where it is, I think he'll be fine. He'll continue throwing. He'll get over 200 innings this year. He'll get over 200 strikeouts as well. He'll be an all-star. He'll be fantastic. I just think it's a very interesting and curious philosophical shift for Luis Castillo to go even farther into this realm of living and dying by his fastball again this year. We spent at the end of last season looking at Luis Castillo's slugging percentage on his fastball in 2022 and like, wow, that is an incredible number. Under 200 against a fastball. Well, that number sort of regressed back, even though hitters weren't hitting it. The slugging numbers adjusted back to what they should for the batting average hitters hit against it. I hope that doesn't creep further in that direction up, and hopefully it comes back down instead, because that is a big key to Luis Castillo's success this year.
Again, like you just documented it, but it is a guy who relies heavily on the fastball all of a sudden. It's funny because he used to rely on the changeup. Like early in his career, his changeup was dominant. I don't really know exactly what's happened to it over the years. It's not really a wipeout pitch for him anymore. In fact, like the last couple of years, it's been his weakest offering just in terms of run value. So he is a guy that totally relies on his fastball now. But to your point, more on the positive side about getting into the Mariners pitching lab, his command's as good as it's ever been. Like he's walking the fewest amount of guys that he's ever walked by a basis of walk rate in his career. He has never thrown this many strikes. So he is throwing his fastball more effectively, and he's throwing more strikes. So with that comes the regression of the changeup a little bit, but it's still also, when it all balances out, says top 5 in AL Cy Young voting, all-star, ace in the best rotation in baseball. Like this guy is everything they've paid him to be. He's everything they've traded for him to be. And I think he's going to continue to do that.
It's remarkable how he's almost pitched through like glaring red flags. When I mentioned the home runs, he gave up a ton more home runs than he had the season prior when he first got traded to Seattle. His average launch angle tripled against him in the last 3 seasons. It has tripled. So usually when you look at a pitcher and you see that, you go, oh my God, that's not a good thing. But somehow this dude pitches through it. It's one of the more incredible things. And which is why when I always come back to this doctrine when talking about pitchers, the worst thing you can do is be average at anything. Luis Castillo is certainly not average. His arm slot, the release point of his fastball, the movement profile of it is as unique as it gets, and he utilizes it by throwing it as much as he humanly can. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah. And that fastball sinker, it's done wonders for the guy. The strike throwing's done wonders for the guy. And to be honest, he might have finished higher in Cy Young voting had he not got blown up in his last 2 starts of the year, because his ERA was even lower before that, and then it ballooned up a little bit. So take those out, Luis might have been a finalist for the Cy Young.
And we expect him to be a finalist this year.
Correct. Another guy that could be a finalist, the guy that's going to pitch right after him, George Kirby. Not quite the strikeout guy Luis is, but comes off a 4.5 F4 season last year, led the league in walks per 9. I mean, like the only glaring issue in this guy's game, and I don't even know if you really call it an issue, it's more about preference of George Kirby, is how many guys he's going to strike out. That's the only thing when you look at his profile that says, yeah, this has to get a lot better. That, and he could still give up a few less hard hit balls, but it's really those two things. Otherwise, you're talking about a guy who has already cemented himself as a top 12 to 15 pitcher in this sport.
There's no arm that has the upside that George Kirby does in baseball. Really? Could you name another one? I don't think there is.
Well, again, if his strikeouts go up, when you pair that with the walk rate and his unbelievable strike throwing ability, you pair those two things and it becomes what? DeGrom? Like seriously, if he starts striking out more guys paired with that command, who else does that in baseball?
Nobody. Nobody at all.
No. Nobody.
Nope.
This is a guy that
and you said top 10 to 12 starting pitcher. Do you want to go over to the fine folks at MLB Network and fill them in on that fact? Because I don't think they quite got it. You know what they ranked him, Lyle?
Way too low.
20th among starting pitchers.
Yeah.
You want to hear some guys they ranked in front of him? Pablo Lopez, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, who has not thrown a single pitch in a big league uniform. That counts. Tyler Glasnow, who has hardly pitched the last few years. And Kyle Bradish. Better than George Kirby? No. Give me George every day of the week.
Dude, Kyle Bradish has, feasted off good luck, especially last year. I'm pretty sure all his peripherals screamed, you got super lucky. Yeah, I'm taking George Kirby over all those guys. Maybe we're biased because we're Mariners fans, but when you look at the profile of George Kirby, I don't think any compare to the others.
I mean, you're talking about 7 pitches, a guy who doesn't walk guys, and he throws 100 miles an hour. Yeah, that checks out. And the other thing the Mariners love about George Kirby, and the thing I love about George Kirby, he is the best big game pitcher they have. He has some clunkers, for sure. He had some clunkers against some bad teams last year. I remember the Pirates start where he gave up the Pirates had 7 bombs. I don't know. Did he give up all 7 of those? Regardless, he got blown up in that start. The Pirates hit quite a few over the wall. But when we're looking at the 10 starts Kirby had against the Astros and the Rangers, he had a 1.14 ERA last year against the Astros and a 1.26 ERA against the Rangers. That's a dog. That is a dog on the mound. Oh, and against the American League leading Baltimore Orioles, only probably the best start the Mariners had all of last season. The 9 shutout innings on Felix's retirement night. One of the best pitched games outside of Felix's perfect game that I've ever watched on television. Truly incredible. The question I have for George Kirby is, you mentioned at the start, is he actually going to, I'm curious, does George want to strike out batters, or is he going for efficiency, soft contact on the ground with his multitude of pitches, keeping guys off the plate and off the barrel? Is that what he wants? I feel like the way George Kirby pitches, he could legitimately do whatever he wants. I'm dead serious. This dude picked up a 2-seamer last year just for the shits and gigs, and it's the best 2-seamer in baseball. So I have a feeling if George Kirby really, really wanted a devastating strikeout pitch, I feel like he could dig one up. But that might not be who he is, because he's hey, listen, I want to get through 7-8 innings on regularity. If you strike out too many guys, your pitch count's going to go up and you're going to get taken out of the game too early. It's interesting. Is something going to pop up this year for George Kirby to strike more guys out?
It's kind of interesting. It's like the Ichiro thing, and how they always talked about, well, if he wanted to hit for power, he could have hit for power, but he doesn't feel like he would have been the productive hitter that he quite needed to be if he had sold out for power. He preferred to hit for average. And you could be right about George Kirby. That could be his philosophy too. He could say, look, strikeouts are fun, but it's not fun getting yanked out too early in games because my pitch count gets too high. So he says, let's be a little more economical. Let's get some ground balls. I'll pitch that way. Have a variety of pitches that all work, even if they're not high strikeout pitches, because his Ks per 9 are never that high. At least not yet, they're not. So what does he do in 2024? He could really go either way. But for how he's fared in his first 2 seasons, he may just prefer to pitch more economically and say, yeah, I'll pitch to ground balls instead. Look at how good I've been regardless of it. So again, I would say the only things with Kirby are which side of the coin he picks, and either are fine, or either are more than fine. They're good. The one thing is he could give up a few less hard hit balls. That's the one area of his profile that could still use a little bit of fine tuning. He did give up some hard hit balls at times last year. It's to your point about how he would sometimes have some clunkers. But if he can shore that up a little bit, you're talking about, like, this guy's ceiling, I legitimately believe, is the best pitcher in baseball. If he strikes guys out at a high enough rate, that's his ceiling. He can win multiple Cy Youngs with the command he has, with the pitch repertoire he has, everything. It's just a matter of, is this in year 3, the year he goes from being what I would already call a great pitcher? I wouldn't just call him good. I'd call him great, to being like a top 2 to 3 pitcher in baseball.
I'm also wondering if George is going to increase his splitter usage this year. He threw it about 6% of the time last year, but we could tell the immense difference between the guy we're going to talk about next and George Kirby's splitter usage. Like night and day, Logan Gilbert's splitter usage turned into a strikeout pitch, flat out. George Kirby didn't really. And none of George's secondary pitches are that outlier strikeout pitch that you can get where you're like, I'm going to get a strikeout 40% of the time with this pitch. He doesn't really have that. Not his curveball, not his slider. Those aren't strikeout pitches. Not the way he's thrown them last season. So interested to see for George. I feel like he will do what he chooses because he is that good. Let's move on to the next guy, Logan Gilbert, we talked about. I mean, this is a third guy who he might not be as favored in the eyes of Vegas to win a Cy Young, but like this is an all-star caliber pitcher in Logan Gilbert who's going to continue to get better, continue to throw the baseball harder, and we talk about unique profiles, the way his fastball comes out, the way his extension allows him to look like he's throwing 100 miles an hour, all while developing a pretty decent slider and a splitter last year that he learned and turned into, all of a sudden, one of the best strikeout pitches in this entire rotation. And another guy, I'm very excited to watch Logan Gilbert coming up here in 2024. How many guys is he going to strike out with that splitter?
Could be a lot. I mean, it looks deadly. And we know Logan Gilbert is not shy about not fine-tuning his arsenal. That's not the right word. But building on it, improving on it. Like, this is a guy who can throw a lot of pitches. And this is a guy who, by the way, you mentioned his slider. I think it was really good last year. And the numbers say it was really good. But you know what can make him even better with the slider and with the splitter? If he can get some of the effectiveness of his fastball back. Like early on in Logan Gilbert's career, his fastball was absolutely deadly. It had hitters off balance all the time. Didn't quite have the same effectiveness last year. But if he can get some of that back and you have 3 deadly pitches, like this is another guy that can be in the Cy Young running. This is how good the Mariners rotation is. In 2021, Logan Gilbert's fastball was deadly. Now, if you can take that fastball and this splitter and the slider from 2023, and he's got other pitches in his arsenal, like such a unique arm that gets crazy extension, he gets right on top of you, he could take another big jump in year 4.
So if you look at the 3 top starters in this rotation, Castillo, Kirby, and Gilbert, the difference between Gilbert and Castillo and Kirby is Castillo and Kirby have 2 different fastballs each, so they can keep hitters a little bit, dancing in the box, and the ball will always move a different direction away from the barrel. Logan doesn't really have that, which is why he added the cutter this offseason. He wanted that second fastball to move away from the barrel. Because if there's one thing that's Logan has really struggled with in his career, he has gotten hit really hard. And I mean really, really hard. It's improved year over year through 3 seasons of big league baseball, but it is yet to improve past league average. And I think this is the year Logan expects that to go past league average. So that's why he's adding the cutter. He wants to have a different look coming out of his hands that moves with the velocity of a fastball, or about 95% of a fastball, but also moves away from the barrel so guys aren't hitting it as hard. The other thing for Logan, he's never been a ground ball pitcher. I was mentioning it earlier. You want to have the more ground balls you have as a starting pitcher or as a pitcher in general, the more successful you're going to be. And Logan has been bad getting ground balls, really bad. And there's a reason he's gotten hit so hard in his career, because it's a lot of hard contact and a lot of stuff in the air. Last year, it finally went over 40%. I think he's envisioning with a cutter a few more soft ground balls on the ground with that pitch to help when he's not striking guys out, get some easier outs and less hard fly balls.
Yeah, and again, this is why the guy is always building on his arsenal. Not that other guys aren't, but Logan Gilbert is very, very tuned in on like his analytics, his pitch profile, and he's talked about it. So it doesn't shock me at all that he's always tinkering with things to try and be the best version of himself that he can. I don't know if it has anything to do with that bag of tricks he always has walking around with him. I don't like, people have seen that bag Logan Gilbert carries around. And I know you always talk about it as somebody who loves pitching. You're always like, what is in that bag? Because he's got like a million different things that he takes around with him at the field. And it's just a guy that, again, is always kind of fine tuning things. And to your point, again, this is why he's adding yet another pitch. He says, look, I could get more ground balls. Here's a way for me to get more ground balls. Here's a way for me to get hit less hard. Here's a way for me to be even better than I've been in seasons past. So look, yeah, he's already got the slider. He's already got, what can be a really good fastball. He's already got a few other pitches. Like maybe this can be yet another, right?
Yeah. And year 4 is always just a thing like this will be the 4th year for Logan Gilbert, which is pretty incredible when you think about me and you being at his debut. Pretty incredible that this is already the 4th major league season of Logan Gilbert. Pretty remarkable that we're finally now he probably finally thinks I'm going to have the right balance of pitches to be my best self.
Right.
Which is good.
This could be a fluky thing, and this will be my last thing on Logan, but is it weird at all he pitches actually worse at home than on the road? Like his home ERA is almost 4. On the road, it's in the 3.5s.
Not much different. To be honest, like there's not enough variation there for that to be probably fluky, as you said.
Okay, but over what's essentially been a 3-year career so far, I don't know. That's 50 points difference. There's 40 points difference.
Half. I don't put too much stock in half a run.
All right.
Too young, personally.
So then it probably is fluky, and that's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are the 3 guys that are going to pitch at the top of the rotation. There are 2 guys in this rotation going into their 2nd year of big league baseball. The first one is Bryce Miller, a guy that when he is at his best, throws a deadly fastball, does not walk guys. And when you look at the start of his season last year, he was on a heater. His first few starts, he was almost untouchable. But his first half and second half were a tale of 2 different stories. So the question for Bryce Miller becomes, what can he be in 2024? Well, he's taken some steps to try and be a little bit of a different pitcher. He's adding his splitter, which is showed a lot over the offseason. It looks really good on video. It's had some success in early spring training games so far. But the question is, what can Bryce Miller be in 2024?
When Bryce came up, there were some Spencer Strider comps because of the fastball profile. Both of them have riding fastballs, high velocity riding fastballs. So when Bryce Miller comes out in his first handful of starts is throwing 70% fastballs, people are like, oh, he got the diamond in the rough. Got him. But this is why you got to pitch through a full season for Bryce. And as he realized, and his fastball got a little more predictable, the location wasn't quite as good. It got hit around a little bit. There's a lot of things that Bryce Miller needs to check off here in his 2nd season. The first thing, I put it as simple, he's got to just find a way to throw his fastball less than 60% of the time, significantly less than 60%. That's where he ended his season last year. If you were curious, because I threw out the Strider comp before, they throw their fastballs, Bryce last year, Strider last year, they threw it the same amount. But as you can tell, and as you've probably mentioned, if you read about Spencer Strider, he's a true unicorn, not something that's really replicable for his profile. So Bryce needs to find a way to be Bryce this upcoming season. That's why he added a splitter to add that strikeout pitch, something he did not have. His short slider last year, not a sweeper, pitch he pretty much scrapped as he went through last season. His short slider was decently effective, but overperformed a little bit by some expected stats. So he's got to find ways to get people off of his fastball and to overall just throw his fastball less.
Because that's how he's going to be his best self. Like Bryce Miller's fastball is so good when it's on. And when he doesn't have to rely on it too much, it's such a good pitch. There's a reason he got Spencer Strider comps. But when it's too predictable and you don't have secondaries to go with it that are really working, like that's when you run into trouble. And I think a lot of the second half, that's where Bryce Miller saw himself run into trouble. Now, if his slider can take another step, because it was good last year, the short slider, the one he's sticking with, and this splitter is really as effective that it appears it has the potential to be, then the fastball usage can come down. He can use it in more favorable counts. He can use it up. He can play it up. He can use it to really punch out hitters. And then also use the secondaries when needed. Because if he's pitching off his fastball, this is a guy that can be more like the guy you saw early in the year. I'm not saying he's going to have a 1 ERA all season, but he can look a lot like the Bryce Miller that was the guy that debuted and really use that fastball well, but also can mix in some of the secondaries to keep hitters off balance. And less like the guy who hitters started waiting for it. Hitters started timing it up because they knew it was coming. Like that has to happen a lot less in year 2. And you know what? When you're a rookie pitcher and you have to work through things in year 1, it's not that crazy to have what happened to Bryce Miller occur. So in year 2 and a new and improved pitch, well, an improved pitch in the slider and a new pitch in the splitter, yeah, he's got the tools to really step forward.
Stuff Plus says Bryce Miller has by far the best fastball on the team. By far. Especially amongst starters, by far the best fastball of those 5. So Bryce needs to find a way to utilize that properly. The other thing, which is similar with Bryce and Brian Wu, not surprising for a rookie pitcher, but they really struggled against lefties. Really struggled against lefties. I'm going to break out this comp. I saved it for Brian. I had it written down for Brian Wu, but it compares for both Brian Wu and Bryce Miller. So I'm just going to break it out now because I can't sit on this any longer. It's some of my best work of all time. So Brian Wu and Bryce Miller against righties this year, they made righties look like Abe Toro, but lefties hit both of them like Juan Soto. Just for some context, Abe Toro as right-handed hitters, Juan Soto as left-handed hitters. Polar opposites.
So I'd love to say you're wrong, but the numbers do back that up. So Bryce Miller specifically had righties putting up a 549 OPS against him for the year, and he had lefties putting up a 917 OPS. Like that's what lefties averaged against the guy. So yeah, that's going to have to come down in year 2.
Yeah, it's going to have to. And we're anticipating some improvements of the secondary pitches he did not scrap, because as far as we know, the splitter was the only pitch Bryce added in the offseason. So it's going to be, how's he going to mix? How's his pitch mix going to evolve? Where is he going to work his splitter? And they've been very cautious with him working his splitter in spring training. He's been on like a limit per start of how many splitters he can throw, which is interesting. I'm wondering, even when the way that makes it sound with opening day 2 weeks away, in his first start, is he going to have a limited amount of splitters? Is he that he's allowed to throw? I think that'll be an interesting question that I wonder if they will answer or say in his first start. We'll find out. And then, and then getting lefties off the ball. It's interesting. I don't know if a splitter alone does that, but it certainly helps. And the splitter will not be perfect in year number 1. I don't know if Bryce Miller will throw it more than 12 to 15% of the time, but that 12 to 15% could be enough to give him that step forward and breather to work on other things as well.
Well, between the splitter and the slider, that could be enough. And the hope is the slider, which he's already thrown in the big leagues a decent amount, can take another step in year 2, because it was a good pitch for him last year. I'm not going to say it was an elite pitch, but it was a good pitch. So if he can have 2 secondaries that work, you're looking at a guy who could really take a big jump. So Bryce Miller has the tools, as we know, to be a very, very good starting pitcher. The question is how he utilizes all of it in year 2. Last guy of the starting rotation, that's Brian Wu, who I really am a fan of. And he's so different than the rest of this rotation. Like Bryce Miller, George Kirby, Logan Gilbert. Those three, what do they have in common? They're pretty over the top. They have like hard fastballs. Wu does too, but those guys specifically like have very hard over the top fastballs, and they don't walk anybody. Bryan Woo has to refine the command a little bit in year 2, but this is a guy that is so deceptive. Like his arm slot compared to the fastball rise that he gets makes him so tough to pick up for opposing hitters. That is part of what makes him so unique and so effective. It's part of why the Mariners love the guy. He had 2 pitches in year 1 that really worked for him, and it was the 2 hard offerings, the fastball and the sinker, because guys had real fits trying to hit those.
The hard stuff was good. The soft stuff was bad. In summary, Bryan Woo's first big league season. The second big league season, we'll see, like, can he dial in one of those off-speed pitches? Out of the 4 guys, like, he did not, this rotation, did not add a pitch this offseason. And nor should he. He has 5 pitches. He doesn't necessarily need to add it. And if you take a look at Stuff Plus likes his secondary pitches. 2 of his 3 secondary pitches, Stuff Plus has a good grade on, and a grade that can improve with more refinement and better location as well. So there's that. And then there's the elephant in the room for Bryan Miller. Shit. Of course I said Bryan Miller. Bryan Woo is that how many innings is he going to be at this year? He threw about 130 last year. And, he's going to have the luxury. The first month of the season, he does not have to pitch on normal rest. What's it going to be like when Bryan Woo, I almost did it again, when Bryan Woo has to pitch on normal rest, and they're going to rely on him for starts, say, in August. Once we get to August, what is Bryan Woo going to look like? Is he going to get there? Because eventually he's going to need, even though he's just 24, he's going to need to cross the threshold to be out there every 5th day no matter what. It's not going to be this year, that's for certain. But how is he going to look when it starts getting to that point this year? Because when it was last year, as good as he was as a rookie, he was hurting them down the stretch when he was out of gas.
He had to pitch through it. And to be honest, like even that last outing he made against the Rangers, it certainly was by no means his best outing, but he kept them in that game and they still won that game. But you're right. Like the way Bryan Woo pitched in that last outing is not the level that he holds himself to. And it's not what the Mariners want him to be. What they want him to be is a really good starting pitcher. And part of the reason I love Woo is because his ceiling truly is a like top of the rotation starter. With the stuff that he has the ability to be a top line starter. Now, it may not happen this year. He's probably not going to throw the innings to do that. It may be more of a 2025 thing when you really see that come into fruition. But he has all the pure stuff to do it. Like his savant page jumps off the page. Like it's for a guy that was a rookie, it's almost all red. There's a couple things he can still work on. Like Bryce Miller, he still has to get lefties out. We know he's going to have to build up the durability. We know he has to refine his command a little bit and give up a few less walks. But when you talk about, again, that deceptive delivery, the fastball rise, the arm slot it comes out of, and the pure stuff, spin rate, velocity of all his offerings, it's sick. And this is a guy that in year 2, again, like this is a guy who he even was a proponent of some bad luck last year. Like for all the things he could still work on. His xERA, expected ERA, 3.48. 3.48. And this is essentially your 5 starter. This guy's the real deal.
The stuff is also good enough where we should see improvements in chase rate and ground ball rate. Again, 2 things that you want to see from all of your pitchers: get guys to chase and get guys to hit balls into the ground. Something that Bryan Woo, for his good savant page, both those bubbles were blue. And you want those to be red instead of blue. So all good stuff for Bryan Woo to go forward here in 2024. And I wonder, how is he going to look when he's out of gas? We can note Emerson Hancock here at the end because he'll probably be a guy that will get some starts in the Mariners rotation this year. The velocity's been up. The Mariners are anticipating a big impact from Emerson Hancock this season. If Bryan Woo needs to get skipped, Emerson Hancock's going to be the first guy up from Tacoma to come up and pitch in place of Brian Wu. I mean, I'm excited to see Emerson Hancock eventually pitch in Seattle. He said his goal in spring training was to make the roster. Unfortunately, unless someone gets hurt, he's not. But that doesn't mean Emerson Hancock can't bring back a little bit of his prospect status. Like, we're going to ask Jim Callis when we have him on next week, if even though Emerson debuted last year, if he could recoup any of that by chucking some 98-mile-an-hour BBs in the minor leagues.
Well, his 3 starts that he made in the big leagues last year, he had some real flashes. And back then he was throwing 91, 92. And combined with the fact, now I preface what I'm about to say with the statement of, I'm not saying he's this anymore. But when Emerson Hancock was drafted, he once upon a time was believed to have the highest ceiling of all these arms. This was before they traded for Luis, but ahead of Gilbert, ahead of Kirby, ahead of others. He may not be quite that anymore. But if he's getting his velocity back, which he is, who's to say he can all of a sudden get up to the big leagues at some point and make an impact? And at some point, they're going to need him to. If somebody has a start skipped, or heaven forbid, somebody does get injured. Like, they're going to rely on him. And if he really can be somewhat of the Emerson Hancock that he once was when he was drafted, like, look out. That's your 6th guy.
What year was it that Kirby came into spring training throwing 101? Because that's kind of what I'm tying Emerson's spring training this year to.
I believe that was 2021. I don't think that was the year he got up to the majors. I think it was 21.
Yeah. I don't think he made his debut that year, but I remember seeing headlines out of spring training. George Kirby, who was supposed to be, mid 90s when he was drafted, in camp throwing 102 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So Emerson Hancock, when he was drafted, this is how hard he threw. Injuries took their toll in the minor leagues. His velocity dipped. It was well noted. But if he's healthy, who's to say that some of that velocity can't come back? Doesn't need to be 98, but 95, 94, 95, 96 is certainly better than 92, 91. So if he can bring back a little bit of that, I mean, we certainly will be huge fans of Emerson Hancock having that ability to step into this Mariners rotation and not miss a beat as well. He's another guy who's not fully stretched out, especially with all the injuries he's had. Certainly not going to be a guy who will throw 200 innings this year. So it could be a good balancing act eventually. When we sort of brainstorm this idea of if the Mariners were going to sign Blake Snell, they put Brian Wu in the bullpen to manage his innings and stretch him out eventually a little bit. If Emerson Hancock's down in the minor leagues, they can manage his innings down there a little bit better than they could at the big league level, because wins at the big league level are more important than wins at the minor league level, and swap them out, something like that, if they need to over the course of the season. So be interesting to see how they handle that. But the Mariners have 6 pretty good options, 5 of them homegrown drafted guys, which is always really cool to see. I'm going to take a swing that I don't think any other rotation in baseball is saying. Yeah, we got 5 dudes we drafted and developed in the last 5 years that are going to be in our rotation this year, and they all have the ability to be studs. It's pretty cool.
It's very cool. And if you even want to throw Levi Stout in as the 7, I guess he's not technically a total homegrown guy anymore, but somewhat of a homegrown guy, and a guy the Mariners really liked before they traded him away. That's your 7. And it's a guy that's pretty young and still has upside. It's a pretty exciting group of starters that they have. And I don't think it's any stretch to say that on paper, this is the best rotation in baseball. They've got a chance to prove to be exactly that in 2024 with 5 guys that can all be serious impact arms. I cannot wait.
All right, let's get to Speak Your Mind. On this Speak Your Mind this week, bit of a special edition. We got back from spring training earlier this week, and we wanted the platform to talk about the trip a little bit. I'm going into that trip to start off. I mean, I had some high expectations. We anticipated we were going to be very busy. We were going to talk to a lot of players. We were going to talk to a decent amount of media members. We were going to get some good sunshine. We were going to see a lot of baseball. That trip, still exceeded my expectations, to be honest. I mean, wrapping it up on Sunday, I was sad to leave the complex, and I was blown away, not only with the seeing in person some of the relationships we built with some of these guys like Gabe Spire, Taylor Saucedo, Sam Haggerty, Dom Canzone, Reed Van Scooter, Ty Adcock, all these guys that we've had on
Taylor
the
Trammell,
offseason.
yeah.
Taylor Trammell, sorry, I knew I was forgetting one. This offseason that we're able to go see in person and talk to. But then just like everything else, it just blew me away of how casual it felt and how much we felt like we just fit in. I mentioned this to you as we were leaving. I remember going back to going to spring training when we were in school and feeling like an intruder. Like seriously feeling like an intruder. Like you probably shouldn't belong there. I'm worrying everywhere I'm walking. Like I shouldn't be here. Like this is really weird.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel that for a single second at Mariners camp. Not for a single second. It felt like the right thing, to be honest.
Yeah. It feels a whole lot different than the first time I was ever out at the ballpark. Like I felt the same way you felt back when we were covering spring training in school about, like this kind of feels like a little bit of an out of body experience. But then even the first time I was at the ballpark, again, it was so different in the sense of like, well, again, I've never been out there before. There's a little bit of the imposter syndrome thing, especially when everybody else that covers the team, one, isn't really like us in the sense of like the type of like content we're doing, paired with it's people that have covered the team forever. Like at least back then, like who are we? But fast forward to now, like I'm with you. Everybody is so welcoming. They're helpful. Everybody's fun to talk to. And the fact that guys continue to be receptive to the type of stuff we do with them content wise, like it means the world to us and it makes the experience all that much better. Just like it was so much fun. I'm like you, I didn't want to leave. I was thinking to myself, can we get 2 more weeks of this? I'd love to be out here the rest of the spring. Like it was, it blew my expectations out of the water too.
And even to, getting to catch up with Ryan Divish, always the best. Like he is, he's awesome. He's like so authentically himself in everything he does, and the way he tweets, and the way he talks, and the way he acts. Like a truly a man of no vegetables, none, and lots of alcohol. So the fact that like every single day we get to catch up with Ryan Divish, and he treats us really well. He's covered this team for so long, and we're 20-somethings, trying to do a bunch of things, and all he does is like throw corny jokes at us and laugh and offer us Jack Daniels as we walk out of the media room. And then like even to like I had not met Shannon Dreyer yet. Shannon could not have been nicer to us down there at spring training, and answering questions we had and talking about the team and stuff like that. I mean, just so cool. And then to the players that we hadn't gotten to talk to yet, and Jerry willing to do content with us. So cool. Yeah. Jerry DiPoto saying yes after all of the stuff that has gone on this offseason. For Jerry DiPoto to say yes to doing something we did. And it's super cool. I'm not going to spoil what we did because I want you to see it when we release it on our social media. But we did get Jerry, which was pretty cool. And I feel like the ultimate capper on, this content journey we've been on to sort of cover all of our bases within the Mariners organization. I'm going to ask you, Lyle, you can add on to that, but I'm going to ask you what your favorite moment was from the trip.
Ooh, man, it's hard to pick one. I will say with Jerry, like we did preface everything when we asked him with, I promise, like it's laid back, it's lighthearted, it's nothing too crazy. Like, cause like we all know that what this off season was. So, and so we wanted to preface it by saying, look, we're not trying to get anything out of you. We're just trying to have some fun. And he was really receptive to that, which was awesome. And he was awesome with us. Like wanted to talk to us a little bit, like wanted to, make sure he knew our names, what we were doing, all that stuff. Like he's a really good dude. But my favorite moment from the trip, aside from the misery I watched you endure of your flight from Portland to Phoenix,
that was fun.
Shout
out to Alaska Airlines.
Yeah. So we told this story on the vlog, which by the time you're listening to this podcast, there's 2 of our 3 spring training vlogs out. We'll put out one more sometime next week. But for those who don't know, TJ had to turn around like 45 minutes when he was into the air because, as he put it, this plane smelled like electrical fumes.
Yeah, it did. It was not good. As soon as we took off, I was like, uh-oh. And then when my phone stopped charging, I was like, that's not good. Have you ever taken like a full 180 bank on a plane going full speed?
No.
Yeah. Well, you would know if you did, because it's like, oh. Anyways, got in a little bit later than I anticipated on Wednesday night, led to a little bit lack of sleep, but I'll shout out Chick-fil-A breakfast for getting me through that day. So that was
there
good.
You go. Okay. Anyway, I'm dodging around the question. My favorite moment. Yeah, I'm really trying to pick one, and I'm trying to think about it out loud here. I mean, the Jerry one was really cool. The fact we were able to do so much on that final day. I mean, we did a lot, period, but we were kind of in ultra content mode that last day. It's like, we knew it's our last day. Let's do every single thing we can possibly do. And when we saw Jerry like flagging him down and having him agree to do that with us, that one was up there. I would honestly pair that. Maybe this is a funny answer, but I would honestly pair that with that same day, us getting to talk to Felnine Celestine and do a few questions with him. And what intrigues me so much about doing that, and why I was so excited about it, it's not just the fact that this may be the most coveted prospect the Mariners have now had since Julio, and in the coming 4 to 5 years until he's in the big leagues or whenever it is, it may be their most coveted prospect since Julio, like over all those years. But it's also the fact that like nobody's done anything with him yet, content wise. Like there haven't been many interviews with him. You haven't seen him on TV much. He hasn't played in any like true games that count yet in quote unquote professional baseball. So the fact that we got to go talk to him and ask him a few questions was awesome. And by the way, his English is very good. Like shout out to Felnine. That cannot be an easy thing for all these guys for that matter. Like I was really, really impressed. He answered all the questions we had for him, and he was an awesome dude. So between those two, yeah, I would say those were my favorite moments, which came on Sunday.
I would say the coolest content moment for me, I really enjoyed the one I did with Cal.
That was good.
I don't think we've released any of that yet. We will here coming up soon. I'd like to give a shout out to Luis for helping us with who we met on the backfields. Knows does some Instagram work with a lot of the prospects, and was able to help us get Felnine and make the connection. Yeah. Super cool. Appreciate him for doing that and helping us out. The coolest overall moment, though, I don't want to toot my horn. It was really cool to meet all of our listeners down there that were down there. Just blows me away that there are that many people who sit down and listen to us. Maybe not every episode, but enough to come up and when they see us and say hello. And that's super cool. You're going to know the moment I'm referencing. It was day 2. So the Mariners' hometown 9 kids were there at spring training. And the 2 kids there were getting shown around the facility, meeting all the players, like doing their whole rounds. Yeah. Super cool experience for them. And just for reference, I was going to say they're probably freshmen or sophomores in high school, about that age, I would say. Yeah, give or take. And I think they're going to get their college paid for. I'm pretty sure. I think that's what the hometown 9 is. Anyways, so they were there. And they walked up to us on the warning track and introduced themselves, said, "Oh, we're listeners to your podcast." It was like, that was super cool. And it was good to meet them and like talk to them for a little bit. And then they went around, they met, Kirby, Logan, Julio, Cal, etc. Whole team. They got the whole rounds. Awesome experience for them. It's the next day. We're standing outside the clubhouse, and Ben, the photographer for the Mariners, walks up to us, 8:30 in the morning. We're just kind of hanging out. He walks up to us like, pretty bizarre experience, guys. The fact that Ben was with those 2 kids walking around the fields, taking photos of them so they could post them online. And Ben walks up to us and says, all these big leaguers, all-stars, potential MVPs, Cy Young favorites, all around this field. And those 2 kids looked right past all of them and pointed at you guys and said, "We want to go talk to you." And I was like, whoa.
Like,
wow.
How does that make any possible sense in the world is what I would say.
It doesn't. And again, I'm not really trying to like sit out here and gloat. Like, yeah, Lyle, look how popular we are. We're so famous. But like, holy shit, dude, I don't get that down here. Like getting to see like the actual kind of impact we make with people is unbelievable. It is. It's crazy. Like what? Like Julio's right over there, and you look past him.
Doesn't make any sense. Like,
no, it doesn't.
I don't think I would. It would take me a lifetime and a half to ever get used to that. I don't think I would ever get used to it, to be honest. Like, to be honest with you, like somebody came. I don't even think I told you this. Somebody came up to me in the airport, like on our flight back. I was on the air train back from, because you fly into the end gate at SeaTac, and you have to take the train back toward baggage claim. And somebody came up to me because we were sitting in the same train car. He kind of looks over. He's like, "Can you do the Marine Layer podcast?" I was like, "Yeah." Like, I was like what? Like, I was like, we're in the middle of SeaTac Airport. So I was like, how in the world does that happen? But yeah, like, I was thinking more along the lines of like, I guess the content aspect and everything. But yeah, to your point, like, this is why we do all this stuff is like for all these, we do it because like you guys all make this happen. That's what I'm trying to say. Like everybody that listens, it's all thanks to you guys that we can do everything we've been able to do. So to actually get to meet some of these people in person was awesome, because I think anybody would tell you that does content, podcasting, anything, like it's very easy to get caught up in the numbers and transparently, like, everybody looks at it. Everybody that's in content's always looking at that stuff because you're trying to find ways to keep growing. But when you have real life experiences, when you realize like there are actual people out there sitting and listening to you and like consuming the stuff that you do, and it's more than just a number, it's such a surreal experience. Like the fact anybody wanted to take a picture with us, I was like, why? I mean, not that I don't appreciate it. It's like, I mean, I could not appreciate it anymore, but I'm just thinking to myself, like with me, like with TJ, like the two of us, like
just two normal people.
Yeah. Like, I mean, again, just the wildest thing, but we could not appreciate it any more than we do. Yeah. Like that. You're right. That was truly the coolest part. And like, there've been some people that it came up to us at the ballpark last year at T-Mobile, I mean, but I'd almost say this spring training experience took it to a bit of a different level, like that I didn't realize.
Just think of how much we've grown since the end of the season. I mean, yeah. Like it's pretty remarkable, to be honest, the amount of traffic we've increased since the final pitch was thrown at the beginning of October. Like it pretty insane. So just to see all that, and potentially even the amount of people who walked up to us who didn't listen to us at the end of the season and found us in the off season would be pretty crazy. Yeah. I don't think we found anyone that was exactly that, but no one said it specifically. So that could absolutely be the case. Last thing for me, Leo's Island Barbecue lived up to the hype. That place was unreal. Again, shout out Ryan Divish for tooting the horn of that place forever. We went twice in 4 days. That tells you all you need to know.
And we never went while we were at school. I think Divish has been tweeting about this place for years. I'm pretty sure he was tweeting about it back when we were at ASU, but we never went. Even the few times we went out to Peoria to go to the games, we never managed to stop over. This time we made it a point to do it. And we were like, all right, like this lived up to the hype. Divish wasn't pulling our leg.
Like, as Divish always says, no vegetables, extra mac.
Yeah.
It's the way to go.
Right,
I confirm. I ordered it twice. That's the way to go.
Yeah. Oh, I'm going to throw one more in there too, and then I promise I'm capping it. Shout out Alvin Davis too, who might straight up be the nicest human being on planet Earth, that was pretty cool.
Alvin Davis introduced himself to us, not the other way around.
I think it was, I mean, part of it, we got to give credit to TJ. He's wearing his ASU sweatshirt, which is Alvin Davis is an alum of ASU, just like we are. So Alvin saw TJ wearing the hoodie, and he walked right up.
It's like, I'm a Sun Devil. I'm like, yeah, we know. So are we. Right. That was pretty cool. It's like, yeah, I'm Alvin. Yeah, Alvin. Mr. Mariner, we know.
We know who you are, but you know what? We're gonna introduce ourselves, right? So
yeah. That was awesome. And shout out Mike Cameron too.
Yeah.
Just
awesome. Overall, fantastic experience. I think we covered pretty much all of our bases with what we did on the trip. If you want even more details about it, you can go watch our vlogs. 2 of them are on YouTube. There will be one more next week. Make sure to go check those out. Ultimately, awesome. And like we said at the end of our 3rd vlog, which is not out yet, but you'll see it soon enough, I think we plan to run it back next year. I think we're planning to go back because it was so much fun and it gave us the opportunity to do so much. So thank you to all you guys. As always, like we always say, it's really, really not possible without all your help. So You guys are the best. With that, that'll just about wrap up this edition of the Marine Layer podcast. You guys know the drill. You want to listen to the full form pod, you can do so wherever you get your audio podcasts. Make sure to rate and review 5 stars, leave a written review, download the episodes. That's all on the audio side. If you're watching, hit that red subscribe button. Why not, right? It's super easy. Takes like a second to do. Like and comment on the video as well. And then follow us on social media. We're on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube Shorts at Marine Layer Pod. That's TJ. I'm Lyle. As always, we thank you guys for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon.